Hello folks, Reverend Crystal Cox here, Universal Church of Light. We are an all-faith church based out of Port Townsend, Washington. And this video goes along with a lot of them I have out there on my church doctrine, what it is that I believe. And today I want to talk to you folks about taxes. I have talked about this before. I certainly have it in my bylaws, and you should too. And so I just want to visit with you a little bit about why are you paying property taxes? Okay, so say your house is in Port Townsend, all of them are worth $1 million, right? So say your house is worth $1 million, and the building next door is in your same neighborhood, it's right next door, and it's a church, and they don't pay any taxes, okay? Is that fair? Okay, say it's a nonprofit next door, and they don't pay taxes. Is that fair? Okay, well, it's not about being fair because the governments of man don't play fair. Okay? They're not going to be fair with you. You have to claim what's fair to you. So am I saying, oh, churches should pay their fair taxes? No. I'm saying all property taxes is unethical, immoral, dark. Okay? They say, oh, we're using it for roads. We're using it for, they're not. Okay? And if they do use it for roads, like what's going on in my town now, Port Townsend, they'll chop down trees, they'll do whatever they want. It's not anything that's of your heart, your value, and your ethics, okay? So they're the governments of man, okay? Now, these government buildings, and my town is just an example. So wherever your town is, obviously, it's the same. So, look it up in your town. The government buildings don't pay property tax, okay? And there's a lot of them. The government properties don't pay property tax, okay? Some nonprofits don't pay property taxes, and some do. Okay. For example, in our area, we have a company called OLICAP, and it is a very large nonprofit here. They get about $6-7 million a year. You can check that on the nonprofit records. And go into in my area, it's an example. Wherever your area is, go into your county tax records. In my area, the example is go to Jefferson County property taxes, and look up addresses. The site's really glitchy, so sometimes you got to keep going from property address back to another one and just put in the address and not the street name. It's as if they don't want you to know. Anyway, so you go in there, you look up OLICAP, they don't pay any taxes. Okay, they don't pay property taxes. I think it was like $9 one time. And they have buildings worth millions, right? So why is a nonprofit different than you? Okay, why is a church different than you? Okay. I want to give you one more example in our area. There's other nonprofits here who do pay taxes. So what is the deciding factor? Is it because you're funded by government money? Or if you're the majority of your funding's from government money, then you don't pay property tax? Okay? So let's take a look at, there's a Jefferson Utility District is what they call it. Or no, PUD. They call it here. And it's where I'm from in Montana, we had co-ops. Okay? So then they paid out to their people over years, right? Over here in Port Townsend, Washington, Jefferson County, it's a public utility per se, but it's a nonprofit, okay? It's called PUD, and it's a nonprofit, and they pay the people who run the company so much money, tons of your money, right? They got fancy new vehicles, they got plenty of money to throw around, right? And then now they're doing internet, they're doing all their stuff, but they're charging us a whole lot of money, right? Now, energy is free. It should have always been free. It shouldn't be in a wire, okay? It's corrupt governments of man that keep you from free energy. Tesla, when Tesla was talking to JP Morgan about, bringing electricity to everybody, and JP Morgan guy's like, well, how do you get it in a wire? And Tesla's like, a wire? And then they forced it into a wire, okay? They dammed up the rivers. They did everything they could to force electric to your house, and then you can pay them for it, and then you can be a debt slave to them and their society and their governments of man, okay? Electricity is everywhere. Study the Tesla stuff, free energy. I've met people who've invented things. There's swings, and there's rocking chairs, and there's the Searle generator. I studied that in the 80s and the 90s. There's literally hundreds of free energy machines. So that's what your local utility people should be doing, right? No, but you can't do it either because it's illegal. So if you have a local nonprofit, such as PUD, electric company in your area, if they're a nonprofit, and they get money from the government, is that why they get to be a nonprofit? They don't pay taxes on their buildings, okay? So they're a nonprofit that don't pay property tax. And they charge you a massive amount of money to have electricity, which should be free. And because all these governments work together, they keep you from free energy. Oh, free energy is illegal. Don't use free energy. And they're like, don't use wind. Don't use any of that until we can do it. My family in eastern Montana, they took the land. They made the windmills go through, and they took it by eminent domain. And it was a company out of Spain. Okay, so until they could harness the wind and put it in a wire and sell it to you, you weren't allowed to use it. Okay, we could all have wind generators. We could all have water movement that makes it. The water, the tides make a massive amount of electricity every night. But you gotta wait till they figure out how to get it in a wire and charge you and control you. You can't use it, but it's everywhere. And it is the power of the living God right here, right now, every day, free energy. But they use energy to threaten you and harass you and terrorize you. We're going to shut it off. We're going to shut it off. And it's such a huge bill every month, right? Heating and cooling should be free. It's easy. Now, when a nonprofit like PUD, the local electric company here in Jefferson County, Washington, is forced on you, then it's not a nonprofit. It's government. You're forced to use it. You have no choice. Oh, you don't have to have electricity, right? Okay. Well, they slam us for that, too. Like when you're living in a car and you don't have electric, they're like, we pay for you to live. We pay for you to breathe. Anyway, none of you should be paying property taxes, okay? So those of you who are, you have said, I'm a ward of the state. I want to be governed by man, okay? So basically, what do? So the church next door, how did they become a church? How come they're a house, they're next door to you? You are a house. Why aren't you a church? Okay, look up the laws. You do not have to incorporate to be a church. There is a separation of church and state. You say, I'm a church. You have two people in your home. Whatever your philosophical views are, your morals, your beliefs, that's your religion, that's your church. Say, I am a church. If you want to do a corporation, okay, and you want to get a bank account, you do your own bylaws. So you have your own government. What do you believe about medicine? What do you believe about abortion? What do you believe about taxes? What do you believe about marijuana? What do you believe about education? What do you believe about animals? What do you believe about anything? That goes in your own governing document of the church, okay, the bylaws. Every single one of you should do it, okay? There's no reason for you to force yourself to be a ward of the state. And in Port Townsend, I swear every month there's a new tax going up for property tax, right? Meanwhile, the churches and nonprofits aren't paying it, and they're running everything, right? You notice during the pandemic, everybody lost everything. Okay, but these big government entities, they got money, tons of it. I mean, the Maritime Center's buying buildings. The down there at Fort Worden that they were doing their classes, they bought the flagship building downtown. So the people that aren't in the governments of man, they're losing everything. But the people in the governments of man, they're getting everything. Okay, so step outside of the governments of man. And then once you're governed by them too, they tell you what to eat, you know, where to go, what you can wear, how you can drive, where you can drive, what you can do, and they govern you, okay? But you give them permission to do so. So, again, this is examples anywhere, but Port Townsend's what I'm talking about. There's none of you that should be paying taxes. So every week it seems like they're raising the tax for something, and they lie, pants on fire, right? Oh, we're going to do a tax for affordable housing. They never do it. We embrace housing first. They don't. We're helping the homeless. They don't. Okay? But they get wage raises. Okay? These are the governments of man. Okay? Now, when you know and understand the power of the living God, and you know that the ocean makes electricity, and the wind and the sun, electricity is everywhere all the time. There's no way to stop electricity. It's always there. Okay? But they created a system to contain it so they can contain you in that system. Okay? So, look up the religious discrimination laws. You cannot discriminate against anyone based on religion. And even if they do not believe in any religion, you can't discriminate against them. There's not one household in Port Townsend does not qualify to be a church. I'm not giving you legal advice. Okay, it's your business. But this is my church doctrine. This is what I believe. And I have seen, I studied tons in the 90s with different groups about how taxes are illegal, and, you know, we agree to them, and how we're a ward of the state. And you know how that all is, the Social Security number, and how they, you know, trade us on different markets. And I've studied all that. I've seen all that. And that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. That's income tax. You know, we've had presidents that have done away with it. People didn't like that. They want to be taxed. They want to be controlled. They want to be jabbed. They give me, you know, tell me what to do, oh overlord. Government's a man. So if you just really need the government's a man to tell you what to do, you keep paying those property taxes. I could not believe it, some of the buildings in Port Townsend, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in property taxes, right? They're going up all the time. They're lying about what they're going up for. They're not using the money for that. There was $1 million come in for this affordable housing units. And right there in the documents, they said they could use $600,000 of it for a mental health facility. So if you're low income or you're homeless, you're ignorant. You're mentally diseased, okay? And if these guys are in the government's a man, then they're smart and they don't need a mental health evaluation, and they're your overrulers. They're your prosecutors. They're the ones arresting you. Okay, they're the whole system in the government's a man, the mayors, you know, the commissioners. They're the ones creating these doctrines that say if we get $1 million for housing, we can use 60% of it to assess whether you're mentally ill or not, and then that's our building, and we don't pay property taxes on that building because we're the government's a man, and then the medicine of man, you see my doctrines out there on medicine and doctors, then the medicines of man are in that building. And then homeless people, for example, can pay hundreds and hundreds and thousands of dollars a week, a day to all these doctors, and then you send it back out to the tent. You get the low-income housing people come in. Why are you so sad? Why are you so sad? Well, because I don't got no money and you got all the money. Oh, well, here's why you're really sad. It's your mother's fault, and here's your bill. And then the insurance pays it, and their system goes, and they collect more, you know, monopoly. Like the Monopoly game. They collect more buildings. So this is a doctrine on property taxes. Okay, it is immoral, it is demonic, it is not used for what they say it is used for, and there's no reason you should be paying it. Every single one of you can be a church today. You just call up the auditor, I'm a church. You get off the roster, okay? Get a DBA if you want, doing business as, incorporate if you want. You don't have to be a church. You just tell them you're a church. Okay. Now look up these laws yourself. Again, I'm not giving you legal advice. It's your business. But it's just I'm not about the governments of man. And my doctrine of my church is not necessarily about you, but your doctrine of your church is about your belief, your ethics. Okay. And that's your government doctrine. You file it with the bank when you start your bank account, okay? Because they're really interested in the banking part, but really you have it all in there. I used to think how weird it was, you know, when the Congress would get together and they would condemn someone. All right, everybody, let's spend, gosh, what? $100,000 in wages and taxes or whatever, and they're doing a vote on to condemn somebody. We condemn this action. We condemn this. And I always wondered what the heck. But then when I was doing my church bylaws, I realized because I'm an all-faith church. So I was writing through what I specifically condemn, because that opens up to some demonic, some dark stuff, and I'm not open to that. So I put, yes, all faith church, but I put what I specifically condemn. And it dawned on me, that's what the governments of man do. And so when they do these votes, this is their corporation, okay? This is their government, body of government, and this is what they do within it. But you can create your own this second, this day, okay? And then you create your own bylaws. And then when something comes up and you go to the courts of man, they refer to your bylaws on what it was you should have done. Now, this can be in some states for marijuana. Yes, could be property taxes, whatever your beliefs are on different things. Some of the churches have had, you know, multiple marriages or different sort of medical things or whatever. Their doctrine of their church is completely outside of the governments of man. And a lot of people, like with what's happening in the last couple of years, so you got the Vatican, or say you got the head of the Baptist church or the head of any of these churches that are in other countries, okay? So they create the main doctrine for the way you live, you know, like Catholic or whatever. And they tell you, well, today abortions are bad. Today they're not bad. Well, now today this is bad and today that is, and they change it all the time because that's their government doctrine and you're following it. But you can have your own government doctrine, your own church, okay? In order to be self-governed, you have to, first of all, not need a big brother all the time governing you, okay? Controlling every single thing. Now, we're like, well, what about money? Say they control the money, they create the money, they make the money, they created the commerce system, okay? They control all the lands, they give the lands to the people who have the mills. Like in Montana, this guy I knew had a mill there. They gave him a block grant to start his mill. They give him, thousands and thousands of acres over his whole life. And then at the end, he gets to just donate it to his kids or whatever. It's not... all those lands are available. We're not allowed to just go out and build a house. We can't have an outhouse. We're not allowed to collect rain. We're not allowed. That's the government's demand, okay? So if you want to be in the government's demand, you stay in the government's demand. But if you research your rights and you understand that you don't have to pay property taxes, you go, oh, if I don't pay property taxes, they're going to take my property. And they do. You got a couple, 3 years. People go in. I studied that tons in real estate. Like I'll go and pay the taxes and then I own the property. So I might get a property for a few $1,000s that's worth a few $100,000, right? Or a few million, and I've seen that happening. And it's a ridiculous system. You just step off the line, right? You don't exist in their world. And then you do, okay? So you buy a property in their system, fine. Get it off the tax rosters, okay? Get zero taxes. If only CAP can have zero taxes and PUD, because I don't like saying PUD because I think it's a weird name for an electric company. They're a nonprofit that you are forced to use, and they don't pay taxes on their buildings, okay? Now, some of the nonprofits do. Again, go into the Jefferson County tax base. It's an example of my area. And see who's paying property taxes and who's not. There's a lot of churches here that are not, okay? Why can't you be a church? Oh, we don't want everybody to be a church. Why not? You have a belief about everything. I know you do. Okay? And even if you have a belief that churches are bad or they're indoctrinated or well, your church doesn't have to be that, okay? I'm not talking about to a Catholic church. I'm talking about your church, or not these big churches that have a governing body somewhere else. That's the same as the government's a man, okay? Big religion is the same as the government's a man. They tell you what to do. Oh, I got it from God, or I got it from Mary, or whatever they say, right? Okay, well, what do you feel? What do you believe? You are a church by law. Do the research. It's pretty easy. How do I become a church? And like in Washington State here, there's that Universal Church of Light. No, that's me. Sorry. Universal Church of Light in Washington, I recommend them. The Universal Life Church that ordains people all around the world and they do weddings. It's been controversial on and off. I got ordained there. I got ordained a couple of places. But anyway, they do it all over the world. So, and so do we. I have pastors in my church that are all over the world. And so when you say, well, how can that be? How could you have pastors in other? You look at that church out of Seattle, Universal Life Church, and they ordain people everywhere. You have your own church, okay? And then, yeah, you get at you go, hey, IRS, can I get this or can I get that? And then they approve you, okay? But really, they can't not approve you, okay? Not only did I get the 501, okay, I got it through them. I didn't need to. I did it to do things a little bit different. But also, there's this form you file for self-employment tax and all the other stuff to completely get out of this system. So you don't have to file any of that. You just say, I'm out of it. I did it because of what I'm creating and the big picture of what I'm doing. But research it. You don't have to incorporate to be a church, and you're all a church, and therefore none of you should be paying property taxes. Now, recently, I don't have it with me. I meant to bring it up here. The Port Townsend Free Press did an article about a law that changed in the last few years where churches don't have to ask the government's a man if they can help people. So for so long, they kept people homeless. And why? They keep them out there because it gets their system going. It gets them more money. They don't want to house them, right? Because then how would their money come in every year and flow out? Oh, we got some homeless. Let's just get them housed. No, let's get the money, millions and millions coming to us every year and keep them unhoused, okay? Well, this law says that the churches don't answer to the government's demand, which we already knew, but they kept coming and coming. You got to get licenses. You can't let people stay there. You can't let people park RVs or tents, or you can't bring people in to feed them. You can't help people, okay? Which is what the whole point is of a church for a lot of people. Doesn't have to be for your church. But now this new law, again, check out the Port Townsend Free Press on this. It's really awesome. really solidifying the fact that once you do become a church, you can let people camp in your yard. You can bring in RVs. You can actually get out of some of the zoning and the horrible things that they do to govern you, okay? And have a more peaceful life. Again, that's up to you. This is the doctrine of my church. This is my belief. This is what I believe everyone should do. I don't believe there should be any property taxes. And if you say it's used for roads and this and that, well, look at Port Townsend, get their budget, okay? What I see is $170,000 for every CEO of every head of every department, and big art projects, and wiping out roads and taking the trees downtown, and everything they do is just hideous, okay? The cool projects of the cool people is being wiped out. Buskers, the cool things about Port Townsend are disappearing. And these governments of man are doing what they want with your money, okay? Keep your money, don't pay property taxes, and then buy a building downtown and create something fabulous yourself. Okay, buy a piece of land with it instead. It's so much money. Or get your congregation, people of like mind, to buy a land or piece of property somewhere around Port Townsend. Have your community gardens. Have your your off the tax roster place. Not like the electric company. Not like Ole Cap. Not like all the government buildings, but a building that speaks to people that are like you. Okay, so all of you people that were out there trying to do a commercial business, we're going to tax you. We're going to come over and say what kind, what you need to do. If you were a church during all this last couple of years, okay, you feed people, they come and go, you wouldn't have the rules of man. Okay, and that's how it's supposed to be. The overreaching darkness of the church the last couple of years of the governments of man came in and shut the church down. You can't have people, right? Imagine a government of man not letting people congregate because of some disease they made up. I mean, all of the cures for everything is there. Okay, there's frequency cures, there's herbal cures, there's it's pretty shocking that the governments of man can tell you as a church that you can't have congregation members come over because of something that they say is for public safety. Okay, that is so far away from the power of the living God and the truth. Okay, that is the governments of man, and there are many out there who believe them and worship them, and every new thing they say, these people will follow along. I've studied stuff my whole life. I've been a psychic my whole life. I've studied massive amounts of information. I have my belief based on what I believe from what I believe, not what I'm told, and it changes every day or every week or every month or every year. Or even, you saw the Catholic Church shift, right? Okay, 6,000 years, abortions are bad and sinful, but the governments of man would like us to change that, so we're going to say something different so that you guys can have your little demonic agenda, right? And that's what the Catholic Church did in the last year. Pretty sick, right? So, there's no reason you should be paying property taxes. Become a church. You don't like the word church? Keep paying it, whatever, okay? A church is a way in this system to operate your own belief systems, okay? If you want to build your gardens, you want to build your own type of school. I see over here at the Chimicum School, there's so many amazing programs and stuff that different teachers want to create, and the government's like, well, no, we got to study it. We got to hire this person to do this and that, and hundreds of thousands of dollars in studies to see if that's appropriate. These mamas know, man. They want to create some homeschool, cool environment, but they want a regular school, a cooking and gardening and teaching kids to be who they are. They want to create these beautiful things. The government's man are like, nope, nope, nope. So Port Townsend, I'm sure there's like a dozen of you mama bears out there, highly intelligent, trying to create stuff like this. Create it under a church. No property taxes, okay? How are you gonna get funded, okay? You can get the people, the kids' parents that go there to fund it, but you can be a co-op, a co-op of schools, a co-op, your church congregation comes together of your like mind and your like mind beliefs, or like mine, all faith, right? And then you can decide, okay, how your children are educated and what matters and who should be learning how to grow things in the ground, okay? How to use rainwater, okay? How to navigate your emotions. The things that we're not taught in school, these women want to teach, and the government's shutting down, okay? So, doctrine of property taxes, just don't do it, okay? It's a gateway drug. All right, blessings to y'all. Y'all, I said that, blessings to y'all.